The Lost Boys from 1987. This movie is a classic, and as I said in my top 10 vampire movies video, it's really more about the vibe, in my opinion, than anything else, but that's not a bad thing. In fact, I think it just really works. It's a movie that feels like a mixture of Near Dark and The Goonies, mixed with, a very cool 80s soundtrack. And obviously the title is meant to evoke the Lost Boys from Peter Pan. The vampires in this movie refuse to grow up. They are eternally youthful. As a matter of fact, the original idea for this movie was literally a Peter Pan vampire story for kids. Yeah, I know. It's pretty weird. And it changed when Joel Schumacher became the director and he wanted to make a movie that was a little bit more grown up than that. And I have to admit, as a guy who is about to turn 41 years old, there's something kind of appealing about being like 20 years old forever. Like, I know that's not how life works, but sometimes I wish I could go back to being 20 years old, especially if it meant that I could undo some of the mistakes I made. I think everybody kind of wishes they could turn back the clock a little bit at a certain point, which is part of the allure of vampires and why they're such fun monsters to ponder. And I think the movie showcases that appeal in some very cool ways. I know in my video about vampire movies, I said this movie wasn't all that deep. But at the same time, I think it's kind of a fun commentary on how kids are often expected to act like everything is normal when it clearly isn't. Every generation has some weird shit going on. 80s kids had, threats of nuclear war and the AIDS crisis. My generation had 9/11 and a financial crisis. The current generation has, all the shit that's going on now. And you're just expected to kind of ignore all the craziness, go to school, get a job, start a family, rinse and repeat. And in the case of this movie, they're expected to live in a town full of vampires. Very common problem. But I think the allegory is still there. And what do you think? I probably should have asked this in my last video, but if vampires were an option, I realize this is a rather fantastic and juvenile hypothetical question, but if they were real, would you ever consider being one? I don't know. I think there's pros and cons. The biggest con is that, you have to kill people to live. But you know what? There's more than a few people in this world that we could probably do without. I mean, why don't vampires just kill shitty, evil people? Kind of like Dexter, but with vampires. I probably just gave Hollywood an idea that I'll end up getting no credit for, which is fine. But I think that's enough of an opening yap. I say we get into it because this is going to be a long-ass video, as you can already see. I have a lot of notes here, and if you saw my previous video, you know that I spent the summer kind of being obsessed with this movie a little bit. So this is just going to be me getting it all off my chest. So if you want to go along for that ride, then strap in. The Lost Boys from 1987, directed by Joel Schumacher, starring Jason Patric, Kiefer Sutherland, Jamie Gertz, Corey Haim, Corey Feldman, Bernard Hughes, and Diane Wiest. The movie opens up with a camera zooming in on a landscape. It's a little place in California called Santa Carla, which is actually Santa Cruz, but it's called Santa Carla in this movie. And it looks to be a massive boardwalk along a beach. And there's all kinds of carnival rides and games for people to be playing. Seems like a fun place. But the local youths seem to be causing trouble. They're walking around like they're hot shit. But what everyone doesn't realize is that they're a group of vampires. Their names, in order of appearance here, are David, Dwayne, Paul, and Marco. And Marco, of course, is played by Alex Winter, a.k.a. Bill S. Preston Esquire from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. He doesn't have many lines in this movie, but I still think he manages to be a memorable member of the Lost Boys. Very underrated actor. And these guys are not just some troubled youths causing trouble on the boardwalk. What they're actually doing is playing with their food. A security guard stops them from ripping apart some dude, and he tells them to get off the boardwalk. They just smile and leave. And a little while later, the security guard is heading towards his car, and he gets attacked from above. Yeah, these vampires just straight up fly. They don't even need to become bats in order to do it. I'm already in. And somehow, they pull the guard up into the air, and he rips the entire door off of his car. I mean, what the fuck is going on here?
What'd you do?
And then it jumps over to daytime, and the Emerson family is introduced. Lucy and her two sons, Michael and Sam, are moving from Phoenix to Santa Carla. Lucy is recently divorced, and she's looking to start over. Her sons don't like the idea, but they really have no other choice. Money is tight, and Santa Carla is a cheap place to live. And we'll soon see why. And Michael is supposed to be about 18 years old, and Sam is about 15. And at first glance, Jason Patric seems a lot older than 18 to me, but he's really not. Jason Patric, Kiefer Sutherland, and Jamie Gertz were all about 20 years old at the time that this was filmed. People just looked a little older back then, I guess. Anyway, they pass a billboard, and Michael looks at the back of it and sees some spray paint on it that says, "Murder Capital of the World." Delightful. And as they make their way through town, they can see it's a pretty rough place. Although, I don't know. Not all of it seems that odd to me. There's a couple of goths and maybe a few punks. Doesn't seem that weird, but there is some poor people digging through the trash cans and just a general sense of directionlessness. There's also some girl licking a rat, as you do. I don't know what the hell's going on here. I guess she's kind of a proto-Tom Green. And Mike stops and asks someone if there's any jobs around here. And the guy says nothing legal. Really? Nothing legal. That seems unlikely, but okay. And eventually they arrive at Lucy's father's house. They're going to be staying here for a while until Lucy gets back on her feet. And I guess she ended up getting absolutely nothing in the divorce, which is kind of crazy because she's got kids. So you'd think there would be some kind of alimony situation, but I guess not. And Lucy's father is playing dead, which is weird, but it's not the weirdest thing about him. He lives in a pretty secluded area in the woods, and he loves taxidermy, so that's nice. Senior citizen Norman Bates over here. And Sam asks his grandpa if Santa Carla is really the murder capital of the world, and Grandpa says that there's a lot of bad apples around here, and if all the corpses suddenly stood up, we'd have one hell of a population problem. Which is kind of an asinine thing to say, because that's true anywhere. If all the corpses stood up on Long Island, I'd be in big trouble too. And Grandpa also likes reading the TV guide, despite the fact that he doesn't own a TV. He says if you read the TV guide, you don't need a TV. So this is the type of guy we're dealing with. And later, Michael and Sam decide to check out Santa Carla's nightlife, and it's something else. They find themselves walking through a makeshift concert under the boardwalk. There's a band playing. People are dancing. It's wild. Trash cans are on fire for some reason. And the singer is this guy. I mean, already I'm wondering what the fuck is going on here. Who is this ripped dude rocking out with a fucking saxophone? What is going on here? This is the type of scene that, could only happen in the 80s. This entire scene was conceived by 80s cocaine. I have no doubt about it. I mean, who is this guy? When I was a kid, the first time I watched this movie was maybe around 1997. I rented it from my local video store, and it was within walking distance from my house. So you can imagine what that was like for a kid like me. And keep in mind, I watched this on VHS on like a 30-inch tube TV. The ones that weighed like 1,000 pounds for some reason. So basically, the picture wasn't great. And I mention that because it partially explains why I originally thought that this guy playing the saxophone was professional wrestler Hunter Hearst Helmsley, aka Triple H. I watched this movie and I was like, hey, what is European champion Triple H doing in this movie? Are there other members of D-Generation X in this as well? Now, does Triple H play the saxophone? Not to my knowledge. I mean, maybe he smashed one over somebody's head at some point, but I don't think he's a musician. And is he in movies? No. Not unless you count Blade 3, which I do not. Needless to say, I quickly realized that this was not Triple H. It's actually a musician named Tim Capello, and he's pretty great in this movie. And he's performed a lot with Tina Turner over the years. And the song he sings in the movie is called I Still Believe, and it's kind of an awesome song in my opinion. And Michael spots some hot girl dancing to the music. She's really enjoying the show, and so is he. But to him, it's a different kind of show. I mean, he cannot take his eyes off of her. It borders on creepy. You know, it's okay to look, but you should probably try to be a little bit more subtle about it than this. And the girl notices that Michael is looking at her, and she doesn't seem to mind at all. So I guess we're going to see where this goes. And elsewhere on the boardwalk, Lucy is walking around and she finds a lost boy. What a coincidence. He's in the perfect movie for it, am I right? I'll be here all week. Tip your waitress. And she brings the kid into a video rental store to try to find his mother. The mother shows up and everything is just fine. Lucy then talks to the owner of the place and his name is Max. And his outfit is something else. I mean, Jesus. It's definitely the 80s, is it not? And because this guy's name is Max and he owns a video rental store, I feel like I have to tell a personal story here. So we're going to go on a bit of a side quest right now. Hang on for the ride because it's probably pointless and it will yield minimal experience points, but we're doing it anyway. When I was a kid, there were loads of video rental places around. I felt like there were at least 2 or 3 in every town on Long Island. And one of them was owned by a guy named Max. He was some kind of European, possibly Russian, I don't know. He sounded kind of like Dracula, so maybe it's fitting that I'm telling this story while talking about a vampire movie. And Max Dracula ran a video store that I swear was at least 40% porn. And that, like, there was no behind the curtain shit for the porn section. It was all mixed in with the real movies. Needless to say, I didn't frequent it as much as a kid, especially since whenever you went to return something, Max would say, "Who rent?" which is a frightening thing to hear, especially in that accent. And then you would have to say, me, sir, I rented this copy of Mystery Men 2 days ago. Do you really not remember? You get like no customers in here, so I have no idea why you have to ask this. And after you explain, he would say, "Okay, I got." And he would let you leave, but not before trying to sell you something bizarre, like a poster of Jose Canseco or a beeper. This guy was trying to sell beepers and answering machines to people up until like the early 2000s. And one time in the early 2000s, I was like 17 and I had just gotten my license. And once you start driving, at least around here, people ask you to like do shit for them. So my older brother asked me to return some DVDs he had rented from this place. So I grabbed them, and I even remember what they are. One of them was the 2002 Arnold Schwarzenegger box office disaster, Collateral Damage. And the other was porn. So that's great. Max is definitely going to give me some shit about this one. So I walk in, I go up to old Max, I hand him the movies to return, and he looks at me and goes, "Who rent? You do not look old enough to rent." I said, "I'm just returning them from my brother." And he said, "Okay, I got." And then I walked out. He didn't even try to sell me a beeper or nothing that time. So that's my story about Max from about 25, 30 years ago. But the Max in this movie is not him. They may both be vampires, but they're different people. And basically, Lucy kind of hits it off with Max. He offers her a much-needed job. And the titular Lost Boys are also in the store just messing around, once again playing with their food. And Max tells them to get out. And they agree to go. But it makes you wonder if Max may be in danger because the last guy that told him to get out got eaten. Anyway, Sam has had enough of hanging around his love-struck brother. He even tells him that he's tired of being at the mercy of his sex glands, which is a fucking bizarre thing to say. So he wanders into a comic book shop, and the store is run by two teenagers named Edgar and Alan Frog. They're brothers. Edgar Allan is their third kid named Poe. They could be like the Yakko, Wacko, and Dot of the vampire-slaying world. And Edgar and Alan's parents run the place, and they appear to be dead, or at the very least, a couple of burnt-out hippies. And the Frog brothers take one look at Sam and think he's a bit of a weirdo. And frankly, he is dressed kind of weird, even for the 80s. Keep in mind, this is the late 80s, and it looks like Miami Vice just threw up all over him. I don't know what's going on here. And the Frog brothers approach him and give him some shit about his fashion choices. Sam switches gears and says he's looking for a copy of Batman number 14. Edgar says, that's a very serious book. And Alan says, only 5 in existence. Sam says 4, actually. I'm always on the lookout for the other 3. Okay, so I did a little bit of research on this. I'm not exactly sure why it's a serious book, though. I don't think it's a key issue or it has any big first appearances or pivotal Batman moments. It's also something that is not so rare that there's only 4 in existence. That's a little nuts. But because of its age, it would still sell for a pretty penny. And if Sam actually has this super old Batman book from like 1942, and he's not selling it when his family's struggling, well, he's kind of an asshole then. But I'm guessing this is just your average nerd boy bravado going on here. And it makes me wonder, honestly, is this how Hollywood works? Because Joel Schumacher directed this movie. So did Hollywood executives look at this and say, you know what? This guy mentioned Batman in his little vampire movie. Do you think he could be a good replacement for Tim Burton? And they were like, yes, absolutely. And that's how we got bat nipples on the bat costume. I mean, sounds nuts, right? But that's probably how it happened because Hollywood is run by a bunch of, uncreative executives with no personalities who aren't really qualified to hand out bowling shoes. And I guess this little talk about comics has impressed the Frog brothers. Edgar hands Sam a comic book about vampires and tells him to read it. Sam says he doesn't like horror comics. Edgar insists. He says it could save your life. And in a later scene, they tell him that their phone number is on the back of the comic and that Sam should call them if they ever need any help. Because, as Edgar puts it, they are fighting for truth, justice, and the American way. They seem to be heavily implying that vampires are real and that they slay them. I don't know why the American way is involved with this. I didn't know vampire killing was so patriotic, but okay. And Michael seems to follow the girl that he was so interested in at the concert. But he sees her get on the back of a dirt bike with David and the rest of the Lost Boys. So the night is a bit of a bust for Michael. The next day, Grandpa offers to drive Sam into town. He starts up his car and then turns it off. And he says, this is as close to town as I like to get. So Grandpa is a little nuts, to say the least. So that's nice. And later that night, Sam is reading the comic book that the Frog brothers gave him, and he's afraid of monsters in his closet. At age 15. I mean, okay, I guess it's fair to be scared about that sort of thing in a world where vampires are real. But he doesn't know that yet, so, I don't know. And Grandpa also gifts him a taxidermied beaver.
Nice beaver.
Thank you. I just had it stuffed.
Let me help you with that.
And Sam is also terrified of this fucking beaver, so he throws it in this scary closet. Fair enough. There is also, and I mean absolutely no disrespect or judgment when I say this, I am simply saying it because I'm kind of in awe of it, but Sam has the absolute gayest poster of Rob Lowe on his closet door. Again, no judgment. It's a good poster. I just wonder what Joel Schumacher is trying to say with it. if anything. I hope he's trying to say something, because if he's not, I'm just a little confused. Maybe he's trying to say, hey, check out Rob Lowe in my film St. Elmo's Fire. He's hot in that too. I don't know. There is also a giant, and I do mean giant, poster of Molly Ringwald that appears to be just hanging from a bookcase. I don't know. Needless to say, Sam's room is very 80s and a little weird because it has, dead animals in it. Anyway, later that night, Michael is back on the boardwalk and he sees the girl he was interested in. He finally gets a chance to talk to her, and this is how it goes.
Hi.
If you want your hair pierced, I'll do it.
What's your name?
Star.
Oh, your folks too, huh?
What do you mean?
Ex-hippies. I came this close to being called Moonbeam or Moonchild.
And I don't know. The introduction is a little ditzy to me. Like, what's your name? Star. If you want your ear pierced, I'll do it. I don't know. In any case, her name is Star, obviously, and he introduces himself as Michael. It seems to be going well, but they're being watched by the Lost Boys. And Michael gets on a dirt bike, and he asks Star if she wants to go get something to eat. She agrees to go, but just when she's about to hop on, the bike that is, David and the crew show up on bikes of their own. And David asks, "Where are you going, Star?" And he just kind of stares at her. And it makes her visibly uncomfortable until she finally gets on the back of David's bike. And David asks Michael if he knows where Hudson's Bluff is. And Michael says, "I can't beat your bike." And David says, "You don't have to beat me. You just have to keep up." And it's kind of crazy that Michael follows them. I mean, I know he's into this girl. I get it. But come on. He doesn't know these fucking people. They could be luring him out to the middle of nowhere so they could kill him, which we'll soon see isn't too far from the truth. But I guess Michael wants to fit in.
Because I want to fit in.
So they begin to ride across the beach, and it's a very cool scene. Another awesome song is playing, and they are riding across a sandy beach, and I just wonder if they shouldn't have some kind of eye protection. Look at me, a mother hen for vampires. Did you boys bring your helmets? Make sure you're home before dawn. And the actors, for the most part, are really the ones riding the bikes. They really only use stunt doubles for the more dangerous maneuvers. And they end up racing towards a cliff, and they stop short, but they let Michael nearly slide off the edge of it. They all think it's pretty hilarious, and Michael decides to stand up for himself.
What the hell are you doing, huh? No! Just you! Come on! Just you!
Come on. Just you. How far are you willing to go, Michael?
And there's something about that I kind of love. I feel like it's kind of relatable. You can't fight every member of a gang of bullies, but you can challenge one of them and force him to either accept or decline and look like a coward in front of his buddies. And I like the way he says it. Just you. It's kind of badass. I never had to challenge a vampire bully, though, at least not that I'm aware of. And I guess things calm down for a while because they take Michael to some sort of cave, and in it, there's a sunken resort. David explains that it fell into the ground during an earthquake in 1906, and portions of it are still livable, apparently. And David hands Michael a joint, which, in my opinion, isn't a bad way to try to make amends for trying to run him off a cliff. And they decide to have some Chinese food. Perfect. That's exactly what I would want after taking a hit. Where the hell they got it, I have no idea. Did someone deliver it to this ancient resort in the middle of nowhere? Who knows? David gives Michael some rice, and he begins to eat it. But then David asks, "How are those maggots?" Michael looks at the rice and sees that it's maggots. He also gives him some noodles, which to Michael look like worms. And if you've ever seen What We Do in the Shadows, it parodies this scene.
Please, Nick, eat some biscotti. I didn't realize you enjoyed eating worms, Nick.
No.
They are worms.
There's worms wiggling around on my plate.
It's worm-like, but not actually worm.
We stole that idea from the Lost Boys, but I put a nice twist on it.
Classic. And Michael obviously thinks that maybe he just had too much weed. And David asks Marco to bring a bottle of something. David drinks from it, and he hands it over to Michael. Star tries to stop him. She says, "Don't drink it, it's blood." And Michael disregards her warning and drinks it. And why wouldn't he? He saw that the rice wasn't really maggots and the noodles weren't really worms, so he has no reason to think that this drink that looks more like cranberry juice is actually blood. Yes, drink my quote, blood, and have healthy kidneys. Sure. And the Lost Boys applaud Michael, and David says, "You're one of us now." Michael doesn't really get it. And there's a weird montage as he spirals into a night of binge drinking Gatorade blood. And you can hear David repeatedly say Michael's name. And maybe I'm reaching, but I think there's an underlying sexual attraction between David and Michael. I know I'm not the first person to say this, so it's not like I'm reaching at all. But particularly on the part of David, I think he's into Michael. And I think there's a fair amount of evidence to support this. But it's not confirmed with a line of actual dialogue or anything like that. I also wonder if there's not a romantic element between David and the other members of the Lost Boys. I'll touch on this a little bit more as we go. There is also a big poster of Jim Morrison from The Doors hanging on the wall. And that's not really noteworthy, except that Michael kind of looks a bit like Jim Morrison, does he not? I don't know. I'm thinking it wasn't an accident, but moving on. And Michael and the Lost Boys head out to a remote bridge with train tracks running over it. David tells Marco to show Michael what they're doing here, and Marco jumps through a hole in the bridge. Paul, Dwayne, and David follow suit, and Michael looks into the hole and sees them all just hanging on the underside of the bridge. And Michael climbs out to them, which is fucking insane. I defended him over drinking the blood, but this is legit stupid. So they are just hanging out underneath this bridge with nothing but dense fog beneath them. And a train comes through, and that makes things a little bit more tense. Eventually, the Lost Boys drop into the mist one by one, leaving Michael up there alone, naturally terrified. And through the mist, they call out to Michael. They want him to let go. Eventually he does, although it seems more like he just fell rather than let go. And he spirals down. We don't really know exactly what happens there, but he ends up in his own bed. Sam comes in and tells him that their mom is on the phone, and she wants to talk to him. Unfortunately, I don't have a clip of it, but Michael's subtle reaction has always made me laugh. He asks Sam what time it is. Sam says 2 o'clock, and Michael just goes, "Oh." Like, it's just a very relatable reaction for anyone who has ever accidentally slept half the day away. And Michael talks to Lucy, and she has a date tonight with Max. She wants Michael to babysit for Sam, which again is kind of nuts because Sam is 15. Did you need a babysitter when you were 15? I didn't, but it goes beyond that. Lucy is concerned that Michael has been staying out all night, and she wants him to spend some quality time with his little brother. Seems fair enough. And Michael reluctantly agrees. Grandpa is also going out tonight. He has a date with a newly widowed Mrs. Johnson, whoever that is. He decides to use Windex as cologne, and he brings dead taxidermy animals over to this widow as a gift. I mean, a basset hound has more tact than Grandpa. So Grandpa heads out on this most likely imaginary date, and Sam heads upstairs to take a bath. And he's very enthusiastic about his washing routine. I mean, nobody enjoys taking a bath more than this kid. And something is clearly wrong with Michael. He is obviously becoming a vampire, especially as the sun goes down. He seems like he's going to attack Sam, but the family dog, Nanook, attacks Michael. Sam heads downstairs to see what the commotion is all about, and he sees that Michael has been bitten by Nanook. And Michael says the dog was just protecting Sam. And how exactly does this work? Does that mean the dog is going to turn into a vampire now? I don't know. Apparently not. They have a look in the mirror, and they see that Michael is a little translucent. And Sam reacts like this.
You're a creature of the night, Michael. Just like out of a comic book. You're a vampire, Michael. My own brother, a goddamn shit-sucking vampire. Oh, you wait till Mom finds out, buddy.
Sammy, wait. Sam!
I mean, that is so hilarious to me. His reaction is so vanilla given the circumstances. I mean, he reacts like he just found out Michael is selling weed or something. Wait till Mom hears about this. And at this point, Michael starts flying, and he can't seem to control it. Sam is on the phone with Lucy, who is on a date with Max. Sam sees Michael outside the window while he's on the phone, and he starts screaming. Lucy heads home thinking it's some kind of life or death emergency. Michael begs Sam for help, and Sam says, "What are you, the flying nun?" Which is pretty funny. Michael says, "I'm your brother. Please help me." Eventually, Sam does help him, which makes for a nice scene. He put aside his terror to help out his brother. Lucy comes home, and Sam explains it away by saying that he was reading a scary comic book, and he thought he saw something outside his window. Lucy also discovers a milk carton on the kitchen floor. She puts it on the counter, and the camera zooms in on the photo of a missing child, Laddie Thompson. And this kid has been hanging around Star and the Lost Boys this entire time. Laddie is literally a lost boy, and he's been on the boardwalk this entire movie. You'd think somebody would have seen him and reported it, but who knows? Is there even law enforcement in this town? Who knows? And later that night, Sam asks if he can sleep in his mom's room. Again, he's 15. But it's also revealed that he's covered in garlic, so he might be doing this to protect his mom, not so much the other way around. Either way, it's a little odd. And Michael ends up going to the cave where the Lost Boys hang out. Seems like nobody's home, which makes sense because it's nighttime. But Star is there. He wants her to tell him what's happening to him. And what's happening to him is he's getting a boner because she says, "I can't tell you. I don't know how to help you." And then she begins helping him, not with words, but definitely with her mouth. It's a little odd. I mean, she has the information. She could tell him, but she decides to do other things. Honestly, valid. I'm not going to complain about it. And neither should he, quite frankly. And then we get a little bit of a 80s sex montage. Everyone loves an 80s montage, but the 80s sex montage is often overlooked. And after that's all over, Michael sees that his hand is completely healed. I don't know if that's due to the power of vampirism or the power of love, by Huey Lewis in the News. Anyway, Michael heads home, and the reason that Michael can walk around in the sunlight is because he, Star, and Laddie are only half vampires. They won't be full vampires until they make their first kill. So the sun is just kind of a minor inconvenience for them at this point. Michael heads in, and Grandpa takes one look at him and says, "Well, it looks like I'm not the only one who got lucky last night," which is crazy. How does he know this? How did he get lucky? How desperate was the widow, Mrs. Johnson, to bang this guy who showed up to her house with a couple of dead cats in the crook of his arm? You know, smelling like Windex. I mean, I have no idea. And sometime later, Sam goes to see the Frog Brothers. Sam explains that in the comic he read, all half vampires will return to normal if the head vampire is destroyed. Initially, Sam suspects Max, which kind of feels like a stretch because he's never actually met Max, at least as far as we know. And later, Max shows up to Grandpa's house for a dinner date with Lucy. Michael answers the door, and Michael kind of reluctantly invites him in. Put a pin in that for now. Max is also here to make amends for his dog attacking Lucy a few days ago when she went to visit his house to apologize for running off on him on their last date. And he kisses Lucy very awkwardly, and it's frankly unearned, but she goes with it. And Sam unexpectedly shows up to this dinner as well, and he brought the Frog Brothers, so it's a bit weird, to say the least. But unbeknownst to anyone else, Sam and the Frog Brothers are just here to test Max to see if he's a vampire. They feed him loads of garlic by passing it off as grated cheese, which is pretty laughable. And it has no effect on him. They also show him a mirror, and unlike Michael, he has a reflection. So it seems like he's been ruled out as a vampire. The date's final straw is when Sam dumps a glass of water on Max, and I have no idea why he does that. Are vampires allergic to water? It's not like it's holy water. It's just tap water. So I don't know what the hell he was thinking. I mean, if he's a vampire, he's a vampire. He's not the Wicked Witch of the West. And Max says that he knows what this is about. He says that he's not here to replace Sam's father. He just would like to become his friend. And Max decides it's better if he just leaves. He talks to Lucy before heading out, and he says that kids Sam's age need discipline, which I think could be a bit of a red flag. I mean, Max seems like the type of guy who seems perfectly affable until he puts that ring on her finger, and then he turns into a cliche abusive stepdad. Of course, we'll soon see that it's actually much worse than that. Anyway, Michael goes to see Star again, which, after their last encounter, I'm not surprised. But instead, he finds the Lost Boys, and they tell him to come with them. They take him to a remote area on the beach, and some surfers are having a party around a big bonfire. And the Lost Boys finally show Michael what he is and what he's becoming. We see them in vampire form for the first time, and it's pretty awesome. David says the initiation's over, and Michael watches in horror as the Lost Boys attack and kill all the people around the bonfire. It's kind of the only real gory moment in the movie. And once it's over, David speaks to Michael and says, "Now you know what you are, and now you know what we are. You'll never grow old, and you'll never die, but you must feed." So Michael has a lot to think about. He talks to Sam, and Sam wants to know who the head vampire is. And it's kind of weird that Michael doesn't really relay this information at any point. Like, it's not David, but Michael has no reason to think that it's not David, so why doesn't he just say it? I don't know. Their conversation is interrupted when Star shows up. And she finally explains what is what. She says that there's still hope for Michael, but she's running out of time. The hunger within her is growing. Sam, with his comic book knowledge, reveals that Star and Michael are only half vampires, and they won't be fully committed until they make their first kill. She also explains that Michael was supposed to be Star's first kill, but once again, it's pretty clear that David has taken a liking to Michael. In fact, it kind of seems like Star is David's old toy and Michael is David's new toy. And Michael wants to know why Star is telling him this. Is it because she cares so much about him? She says yes, she does care. She also says she was hoping that Michael would help her and Laddie. And Michael kind of laughs at the notion. It's pretty clear that Star wants to free herself and Laddie by killing the Lost Boys, but she can't do it alone. She needs his help, but he has no idea where to start. So Star leaves, and Sam recruits the help of the Frog Brothers, naturally. They steal Grandpa's car and head out to the vampire hideout. Michael tries to stop Sam from going in. He says if something happens, he's not going to be strong enough during the day to protect him. And he says, "Don't worry, this time I'll protect you. You might be a vampire, but you're still my brother." Nice moment between the two. Which gets interrupted by Edgar, who issues a warning to Michael. He says that if you try to stop us or vamp out in any way, then I'll stake you without even thinking about it. And they head into the vampire hotel. Michael finds Star and Laddie and tries to get them out. But it's daytime, so they're all a bit weak, obviously. Sam and the Frog Brothers head in, and they're looking for coffins, but instead find the Lost Boys asleep, hanging upside down like bats in a deeper part of the cave. And they don't know which one is the head vampire, so Edgar says they'll have to kill them all. He says, "We'll start with the little one," referring to Marco. I mean, why exactly? I mean, sure, they don't know who the head vampire is, but can you make an educated guess? Do you really think it's Marco? Isn't it more likely to be the guy in the middle of the other three, in all black, the one that frankly just looks like the leader? I don't know. I guess they don't think that far ahead. And Edgar prepares his stake, and you can see the grooves in the stake where it's meant to retract when he stabs Marco. Not sure how noticeable that was in 1987, but in 4K, it's very noticeable. And Edgar stabs Marco, and it's violent. He's shooting out this weird sort of brown, glittery doo-doo blood all over the place. And the other 3 vampires wake up, and they obviously weren't prepared for this. David shouts, "You're dead meat," which feels like such a high school thing to say. And obviously the Frog Brothers had no idea that this would happen. So they all go tearing ass out, and David pursues them. He grabs Sam by the leg, but the Frog Brothers manage to drag him into the sunlight, and then this happens. That's a very cool and creepy scene, and I love that a tear rolls down David's face. Is it for the physical pain that he feels? Is it for the loss of Marco? Who knows? It's actually, the real reason is because the contact lenses were so painful. It wasn't planned at all. But I like to imagine that it was for Marco. It seems like out of all the Lost Boys, David trusted Marco the most. Just my own headcanon. And then you hear his voice quietly say something that sounds like "tonight," even though he clearly isn't speaking. Very creepy. And Sam and the Frog Brothers make it outside, and Michael and Laddie and Star are all passed out in the back seat of the car. Sam gets in the driver's seat, and they drive off at high speed, which makes no sense. I mean, it's daytime. The vampires can't get you, but I guess they're all terrified. Understandable. They stop by a church to steal some holy water, as you do. And they come home, and Grandpa is annoyed that they took his car without filling up the gas tank. He seems to have no concern about the fact that Michael is carrying an unconscious girl up to his room. I mean, what the fuck? And they decide to make their final stand against the Lost Boys tonight at the house. They tell Grandpa to go on another date with the Mrs. Johnson widow, just to get rid of him. And they prepare for a vampire invasion. They chop up an absurd amount of garlic, mix it up in the bathtub with the holy water, which, I mean, they clearly didn't steal this much holy water, so I don't know what's going on here, but it doesn't matter. Just go with it. And the sun goes down, and the vampires start showing up. Dwayne attacks Sam and Michael, while the Frog Brothers run into Paul, and they quickly discover that garlic doesn't work, but the holy water does. Unfortunately, though, Paul is still coming after them. But the dog, Nanook, shows up and pushes Paul into the bathtub filled with garlicky holy water, and this causes Paul to melt. Tragic. And for some reason, his blood is shooting out of the sink and the toilet. I don't know what the fuck is going on here. How is this possible? Either way, Sam is not going to be having a bathtub party anytime soon. And in the fight with Dwayne, Mike gets knocked out, but Sam manages to shoot Dwayne with a bow and arrow in the chest. And he even backs up into the stereo system and gets electrocuted. Death by stereo, as Sam says, which was a killer line in the 80s. Although I find it interesting that Grandpa owns a stereo, but not a TV. Kind of weird, but that's pretty on brand for Grandpa. And Sam heads upstairs to see how the Frog Brothers are holding up. Edgar says they trashed the one that looks like Twisted Sister, and Nanook helped. Which is funny because the dog is the one that did all the work, really. And they get attacked by Laddie, of all people, who is vamping out for some reason. Star runs in and protects him from the Frog Brothers. Meanwhile, Michael is confronted by David. David says he tried to make Michael immortal. Michael says, "You tried to make me a killer." David responds by saying, "You are a killer." And Michael vamps out a bit, which is nice. For some reason, we never see Star do it. I don't really know why, but whatever. David and Michael start to fight in midair. They are flying around like Peter Pan, and it's kind of funny. And David still is pleading with Michael to join him, even after the death of all the other Lost Boys. David still wants Michael by his side. I know that we'll find out that he has been directed by the head vampire to get Michael to be a vampire. But I'm telling you, David, in his own warped way, is in love with Michael. And the fight continues, and eventually, Michael impales David on one of Grandpa's assortment of antlers. And just look at his face as he dies, as he is finally penetrated by Michael. I mean, if that's not suggestive, I don't know what to tell you. He looks like he is making vampire cumsies right now. And Michael and Star think it's over at first, but they realize that nothing's really changed. They're still half vampires. It's pretty obvious now that David was not the head vampire. There's still one left. Lucy and Max return home to find the place in shambles. Max walks up to David's body and takes a stern look at him. And for some bizarre reason, David's stubble is no longer there. He is clean shaven. Apparently this was supposed to be some digital effect that transforms him back into exactly how he was when he first became a vampire, but it's not really perceptible. And even if the effect worked, it doesn't really make much sense. And Max reveals himself as the head vampire by saying that David and his boys misbehaved. He also says, "Don't ever invite a vampire into your home. It renders you powerless," which I guess might explain why he saw his reflection in the mirror and didn't show any signs of being a vampire when he was having dinner with Lucy and Sam. But it doesn't really explain how David and the Lost Boys got into the house without being invited. I mean, maybe in this world of vampires, you can enter uninvited, but it just means you won't be quite as powerful as you would be otherwise. I don't know. In any case, Michael attacks Max, and Max vamps out and throws Michael across the room. Max takes Sam hostage and says he still wants Lucy. And I can't imagine what's going through Lucy's head at this point. She is literally the last person in this movie to find out that vampires exist. This is all new to her. But she is willing to sacrifice herself so that Max doesn't harm Sam. And just as he's about to bite her, Grandpa drives his truck through the house and it launches a giant wooden spear through Max and kills him. It's finally over. Michael, Star, and Laddie all return to human form. And Edgar asks Alan how much he thinks they should charge for this, which is kind of crazy since they didn't really do all that much. And Grandpa goes and grabs a soda from the fridge, and Lucy asks if he's okay, and he says, "One thing I could never stomach about living in Santa Carla, all the damn vampires." So, Grandpa knew this entire time that this place is infested with vampires, and he just said nothing about it. And he avoided going into town as much as he could, and he spent a lot of time making spiked logs just in case. It's absolutely hilarious. And that's how the movie ends, which is even more hilarious. And that is the movie. Overall, I think it's great. It's an 80s classic. I think it represents the 80s really well. You know, it's a very funny movie, but it also tells a pretty straightforward young vampire story. And even has a twist ending that maybe you didn't see coming. Although I think Max being a vampire was fairly obvious, but they did a good job of taking the focus off him after the goofy dinner scene. And I really like that they didn't feel the need to kill off one of the main protagonists. You know, movies like this often kill off somebody who is good, but they don't do it here. All the good guys live, and that's kind of refreshing. I think the character of Michael is sometimes accused of being stupid, and I think that's fair, but he is supposed to be like 17 or 18 years old, right? So, I mean, how many wise decisions did you make at that age? And in the end, he didn't allow himself to be corrupted by David. And Sam is also a fun character. He's a bit of a dorky kid, of course, but Corey Haim was really great in this movie. For a kid, he really has pretty remarkable comedic timing. Not just for a kid, for anyone, really. It really is a shame that Hollywood really chewed him up and spit him out. It's absolutely tragic what happened to Corey Haim. And what else? David, I think, is probably the most charismatic character in the movie. He's also the most iconic-looking character in the movie. I think it's pretty clear that he's an abusive guy. He treats Star like nothing more than an object that he possesses. And when Michael shows up, he pushes her even further to the side. He's a bit like Andy in Toy Story, and Star is like Woody, and Michael is like Buzz, if that makes sense. And I think it's clear that the true villain of this story is Max. I think He is representative of an abusive, overbearing father, and the Lost Boys are just a product of his parentage. They act like they have all this freedom, but they were never really free under Max's control, and that's kind of the tragedy of it all. I do wish that Star had a little bit more to do in the movie. She is just kind of a victim until Michael shows up. I like the scene of her dancing at the concert. She's probably trying to lure Michael in, but at the same time, I also think she's just trying to enjoy herself. It's probably the one moment of true freedom she's had since she became a half vampire. And the song she's dancing to is very positive and hopeful. And I think she's a character that obviously needs that. No real idea what her relationship to Laddie is, though. I don't think it's ever confirmed. Are they brother and sister? I wonder if maybe she was his babysitter or something. Either way, the limited Laddie stuff in the movie kind of makes me think there was a lot left on the cutting room floor. But who knows? I also love the grandpa. He is hilarious, and he's played by Bernard Hughes, who I know as this guy from the original Tron. What a movie. The sequels don't exist, and Jared Leto can go fuck himself. And I also really like that the vampires in this movie can eat real food, because that's not always the case. And they can have garlic. So that means I can still eat Italian food if I'm a vampire in this world. I'm not saying I would want to be a vampire, but if I was, these are the kinds of vampires that I would want to be. Just because of that. And obviously Joel Schumacher directed this movie, and he is probably most famous for the Batman movies. You know, Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. Or maybe infamous is the right word. But just because he wasn't right for Batman doesn't mean he wasn't a capable director. If you look at his credits, he has a fair amount of decent movies under his belt. But I do think The Lost Boys is by far his best movie. And I think this movie just might be the catalyst for all the vampire stuff that came after it. You know, it took vampires away from the kind of gothic, classic European style and made them a little edgier, a little more modern. I don't think you get things like Buffy the Vampire Slayer or True Blood without The Lost Boys. I mean, maybe you do, but I definitely think The Lost Boys helped it along. Ultimately, it's just a really fun 80s vampire comedy with a lot of heart. The cast is great, the music is great, and it's just very enjoyable to watch. But that is about all I've got for now. I think I've said all I can say about this movie. I've talked for like an hour now, so I do apologize for that. I hope this was watchable, at least. And if you're still here, let me know what you think of The Lost Boys. And until next time, take it easy.
One thing about living in Santa Carla I never could stomach. All the damn vampires.